Most women that have a high body count, it's usually due to trauma in their lives. That's the bottom line. It's not trying to judge a woman that maybe she has a little extra testosterone or just really, really likes to hook up and has been doing it forever. But no, like I said, the majority of women I've either talked to or tried to get into relationships with that had high body counts, usually connected to that was some form of trauma where they were trying to make themselves feel better about life or trying to get acceptance of some kind. And that's what's typically happening. Now, I'm 41. I've had the experience of seeing women that I've known over the years that were at one point promiscuous now be in their 30s and close to 40s and seeing the effects of that. But also, if you look on a global scale, just like there have been recently some celebrity women that have come out and said that, you know, when they were back in their 20s talking about, oh, you know, free body this, I do what I want. You talk to those women now and they're saying, oh yeah, well, I mean, I was saying that back then, but really I just had some trauma I was going through and I didn't really know how to cope with it. And so I was trying to hope that all these bodies on me would make me feel some kind of way. And so I'm going to actually put up on screen here a few examples of what I'm talking about. All right. So let's go to this first one here. It's a stream here. So this is a woman that I actually found on TikTok. And they have this challenge on there where people, it's like a body count challenge where people go A through Z of the people that they hooked up with and put check marks next to it. So like, oh, somebody hooked up with a guy named Ashton. Oh, I put a check mark because I did an A, I did a B, I did a C or whatever like that, right? So this woman did the body count challenge, 23 bodies. But unlike most of the people that did this challenge, here's what she put up next to it. She says, there is nothing that I hate more than the fact that this was my coping mechanism to get through the hard times. The sad thing is there's more, but I don't even remember the rest of their names. Ouch. How sad is that? That she was just, because the names didn't matter. Why didn't the names matter? Because she was trying to use hooking up as a means to be able to deal with whatever she was going with in her past, to where it didn't matter the name of the person. All she matters is whatever this person's name is, this body is going to make me feel better about myself. And then kind of find out it didn't. And then she says to women out there, don't give your body away. Every time you give your body away, you give away a piece of your heart. And when someone comes, that means the world to you. You've given so much away to the point where you can be in love, but there's no passion. It's just comfortable for you. And it's sad. Now, I checked out this woman's page, right? Come to find out, she had trauma growing up. She had anxiety. She had depression. And how was she trying to deal with those issues? By hooking up with a lot of people, right? And so this is what I want you guys to understand, that when you see a woman out there and she's hooking up with all these people, you're thinking, oh man, why did she reject me? I mean, oh my God, I wish I could have gotten a piece of that because she's just being judgmental and yada, yada, yada. And yet you don't know that the reason she might have avoided hooking up with you is because she sees you and realizes you don't have trauma. And she doesn't want to bring on her trauma to you. So she's actually doing you a favor. Because this woman, 23 bodies plus more that she can't even remember, she was going through some major stuff. And had that worked out, you would have now had to be stuck in her trauma. So now I'm going to get on to another person who you guys are very familiar with. Brittany Renner recently came out, and she was on Pearly Things podcast talking about her situation where she was hooking up with a lot of people and how now that she's hit 30, surprise, surprise, she regrets it. But what is the reason that she was doing it in the first place? Let's hear her out.
Hey, to 20-year-olds, and even to my 20-year-old self, I hate how I allowed myself to just be like used up by men.
So for starters, I like that she's taking responsibility, but notice this. This is the regret that comes. And like I said, women that are in their early 20s or mid 20s, they're not going to tell you this. They're going to say, my body, my choice. I should be able to do what I want to with it. I want to hook up with all these guys and I'm going to do it. But they're not going to tell you the actual trauma behind that decision. But later on, when they're reflecting back, they're going to say things like, oh my gosh, I regret this. I can't believe I did that thing with this guy. How can I be so stupid to give up my body so much? Let's continue on with what she says, though.
And that came from a lack of self-worth. I did not understand my value that I was born with. When I think about my list, it's repulsive because they didn't deserve it. But that was an outcome of me discounting my worth. And it's disgusting. I hate even having that spiritual tie in any type of way. But yeah, I would absolutely change sexually how I move around. And not even necessarily because of like the societal outcome. It's more so from my self-worth.
Like, how it makes you like feel.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good knowing that you gave a sacred part of you to a man that looked at sex with you as taking a piss.
Right. So what you say there, right? Like she had low self-worth. She didn't value herself. And again, you guys are thinking, well, it's sexual liberation. That's totally fine. But the women themselves, again, this isn't about judging them or saying, I don't want a woman with a high body count because she's just so disgusting to her, yada, yada. It really goes back to she's got trauma, and that trauma is going to come into your life and affect it in a major way. And the fact that she's even dealing with, these women are dealing with their trauma by hooking up, and we'll get into that later. But like the fact that they're even doing that is a really bad sign for how she's going to deal with stuff later on in the relationship when bad situations arise, or you two don't agree on something. Is she going to go back to flashing back to her trauma and now trying to cope with that by hooking up with somebody else outside of the relationship? These are things that can happen. Now, here's another interesting point, right? Because like I said, it's usually based on trauma, right? And a lot of men don't have an idea of what that looks like. Like, what do you mean she's possibly had trauma? Why would she use sex as a coping mechanism? So, and I'm going to show you a short clip of Blac Chyna. She had a show where she was confronting her mom about a lot of issues. And again, if you just saw Blac Chyna on the street, didn't know who she was, didn't do research like I did, because I didn't really do a deep dive research, you would just think she's hot. I want to bang her. She hooks up with a lot of guys. No harm, no foul. But you're not aware of what was actually going on in her home life and in her family life growing up that caused her to become the promiscuous woman that she now is. So let's take a look at this short clip.
I'm ready to get the ASAP after this.
5 days.
You put your hand in my face again, girl.
5 days.
You're going to stretch your ass across this motherfucking kitchen. You better keep your motherfucking hands on my face.
5 days.
Don't touch me no more. You do it again, I'm going to rock your world in this mother.
Rock it.
Don't do that. Keep playing with me.
All right, bye.
Do it again, bitch. I'm going to
Out my house.
Bye, bitch. I'm gone. I hate you. Boot your ass, bitch.
Woo! Man, that was brutal. Now, I want you to think about this, right? So she grew up in a household where you clearly see her mom was, and I know you're going to say this is all for TV, yada, yada, yada. But look, if I was on TV with my mama, she wouldn't be cussing at me and calling me all kind of MFers and trying to darn near fight me in the house, even if it was for TV. So the reality is that she grew up in an environment where her mom was not showing her a lot of love. They were getting into a lot of fights. She was getting called a lot of names. This is the kind of woman that's going to now go out into the world as a dater and try to seek love and seek attention. And sorry to say, guys, for women, the easiest way to get some form of that feeling is to hook up with a lot of guys, because and it's not that they're even just like trying to hook up with a whole lot of guys. They might think, I'm going to hook up with this one guy and it'll be great. So she hooks up with this one guy, and then he might start to see that she has some issues and he leaves. So now once she's blaming the guy, oh, men are just all dogs, yada, 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 when really it's just he saw your trauma. But then she goes on to the next guy and the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. And all she's trying to do with all these guys is try to find one that's going to legitimately treat her in a loving, kind way that she wants to be treated. But unfortunately, her trauma that gets in the way. Most guys, if they're smart, don't want to be around trauma long term. And that's how she ends up collecting more and more bodies. Most women, from a base standpoint, aren't trying to go out there and just give themselves away to the world. So when they are, that should signal to you that there's a huge red flag that's happened in her life in some capacity, all right? Before I get into the full list of that, though, there's one more video I want to show you. This is, now I already went through a couple of celebrity women. This is just a random woman on TikTok that is talking about like the effects and aftermaths of her deciding to go with this whole hookup culture, and more importantly, her describing the reason she was doing it in the first place. Let's take a look.
I used to get out of relationships. I feel that I kind of just distracted myself with another person. Even if I wasn't in a relationship with the other person, I would just kind of be like talking to them, and I would just play dudes left and right, not gonna lie. And in essence, I thought that I was having fun, and I mean, it can be fun, but in the end, in the long run, I was just really hurting myself and hurting my soul and giving my body away to people who did not deserve me.
Now, see, you notice it's interesting how they notice this later on. Like, and this is why, this is a sidebar, right? This is why women are looking for guys who are going to be leaders, because the reality is, as well-meaning as women are, and I think they have the capacity to make some great decisions about their lives. But the problem is, when they have those emotional ebbs and flows, they don't always have the head on straight to make decisions that are going to be the right ones for them to make, that's going to be beneficial to them and their potential future partner and relationships, or right, whatever. So this is why it's wise for you as a guy to start to learn how you can be a legitimately good, well-established leader amongst yourself, amongst your own life, and amongst your family. Because if you're dating a woman, she's looking for that leadership in part because she knows at the times that she's getting all haywire, you got to look after the kids. You got to look after the family's well-being. And it's important, because this is a woman that without that leadership is making these horrible decisions about her life and then regretting it later. And that's where that comes from.
And I just want you to know that hooking up with another person isn't going to provide you happiness. It's not going to provide you peace. It's not going to provide you whatever you are seeking. Only you can heal yourself. Another person will never be able to heal you. Trust me, I've tried. It does not work. So know your worth and don't distract yourself with other people, because in the end, all you're going to do is hurt yourself. Just speaking from experience.
Exactly. So this is just to give you guys some insight into what it is about these women that's actually making them get high body counts. Again, we're not here to judge the women, but it's to give you guys an understanding that when you see a woman that has a high body count, oftentimes there's other things going on in the background that if you're not aware and understanding of how it got to that point, then it's going to be a disaster for you, right? There was a woman I met years ago in Hollywood, and we kind of got to talking, had a good rapport or whatever. And so she gave me her name, said, hit me up anytime or whatever. And so, we're in the internet age. Before I go out with anybody, I'm doing my due diligence. Even when I did online dating, I would, get the person's name, do a little quick search just to make sure that there's, I remember one time I was trying to go on a date with this woman, and I got her full name and I looked her up, and it turned out she had just had a kid like 2 months prior. Like she was just fresh out the hospital. I was like, why couldn't she just tell me that? So it's always good to do a search on people, right? So I did a search on her name and kind of find out this woman had all kinds of trauma. I'm talking like she was close to unaliving herself a few times. She had severe depression and anxiety, and she wrote a whole book. And in the book, she's talking about how because she had a traumatic childhood and because she was stressed out and had depression, that she was like the hookup queen in her mid-20s and was just hooking up with all kinds of people, hoping that it was going to heal her. Now, looking at this woman today, you would have no idea that this was anything she would have gone through. But to the point, it's like, why did she go through all that? Because trauma.
You need to call her on her cell phone.